Hi there, I'm Sheena and this is the Lesbian Review podcast. This podcast is a spin-off of the popular review site thelesbianreview.com, where we review the best books, movies and music with leading lesbian, bi or queer women. The goal of this podcast is to bring you closer to the best queer media and give you access to interviews with people who are behind the scenes in creating it. Today I'm joined by the fantastic Natalie Miller-Snell, and she's going to recommend 4 lesbian fiction novels to you. Natalie, thank you for joining me.
You are very welcome. This is a real treat.
So you will know Natalie from her show Seize the Day, where she talks about all sorts of fantastic opportunities. She talks to amazing guests and she talks about taking your life into your own hands and really making the most of it. But today I've managed to nail her down and asked her to recommend 3 lesbian novels, but she went ahead and recommended 4. I don't know what it is about my guests. They just love books too much, I guess.
You know what it is? It's one of them we both love so much, and I'm sure we've spoken about it. So, I wanted to share the love.
Well, since that was a beautiful segue, why not start with that book?
Okay, it's Requiem for Immortals by the wonderful Lee Winter. Oh, I love this book. What are we going to call it? Is it a thriller with a side of romance? Is that the...
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's definitely a romantic subplot, and it's definitely a main thriller. The wonderful thing about this thriller, though, is that the bad guy, who's supposed to be the bad guy, is the one that goes through the massive character change.
Yes, exactly. And also as well, what I found quite incredible and wonderful about the book, it's got so many twists and turns. I mean, and that's, I think, very much something that Lee does with her books, which I love. Her writing is incredible. It's a lyrical beauty that just dances on the page. It sucks you in so much. And with this book particularly, you get to maybe halfway through and it could almost end, I think. But then so much more happens, as you say, with the character development and everything else. It's truly, truly wonderful. I absolutely love it. And
there's a twist that you will not see coming.
No.
And everybody who's read this book goes, oh my God, I can't believe that happened.
Exactly. It's so, there is so much in it. I don't think... There's not one person who I've recommended this book to that hasn't come away saying exactly that. Wow, didn't expect it. The whole thing's brilliant. There's so much in it, which is great.
And then the interesting thing about Lee Winter as an author, then she turns around and writes this romance, which I love, maybe just slightly less than Requiem for Immortals. Although it's a strong toss-up, which is Breaking Character. And if you haven't read that book, you need to read that book because it's just spectacular.
I agree. It is absolutely gorgeous. Totally lovely. But all of her books, in fact, Shattered as well, the superhero, that's a whole different genre too. It's a close runner up there for me. Shattered, I absolutely adore that. The whole thing, the exploration of the human psyche, what we're like as a species. I adore that book.
Read us the synopsis, because we're talking about this book, but nobody even knows what it's about yet.
Right, okay, let's do this. Are you ready? Professional voice. Professional cellist Natalya Tsvetnenko moves seamlessly among the elite, where she fills the souls of symphony patrons with beauty, even as she takes the lives of corrupt Australia's ruthless underworld. The cold, exacting assassin is hired to kill a woman who seems so innocent that Natalya can't understand why anyone would want her dead. As she gets to know her target, she can't work out why she even cares. I love it!
But she does.
Oh, she does. Yeah. She really does. I found that quite wonderful as well, the character development there, just to see how she reacts and interacts in the review almost internally on herself as well, and how she adapts and does different things throughout the book. And Alison is such a sweet... Honestly, I absolutely, as characters go within books, she's one of my favourites. I have to say, I had quite a lot of love for her.
I liked Alison, but I got to tell you, Natalya and her grow through the book. She's the one. So Tara and I will have these long debates about which character is our favourite. Because we're complete book nerds.
I love it.
And she's also Team Alison. And I'm like, I don't understand. Like, Alison's great. She's very sweet and whatever. But without Requiem, there's no book. You can't have an Alison standalone.
No, okay, let me put that into context. Requiem for me, she is awesome. I mean, incredibly impressive as an individual, how she changes, how she carries herself. If I were to be in a book, I'd want to be in that role. Maybe not with the assassin side of things, but that's. But if I were to look for the love interest, I wouldn't be interested in Natalya, or I'd be interested in Alison. Do you ever do that when you read books? Do you find yourself?
No. When I read books, I tend to want to be in the character's brain more than anything else. I really can't see myself with anybody other than my wife. It's just one of these.
Oh, quite. Oh, hang on. Let me revert back. I should use that line as well.
It's not, but it's.
Oh, crikey, that is gorgeous.
So sidetracked. Yeah, we got so sidetracked. Okay, so before I'm.
Oh, I love that. I want to hug you.
Okay, so what's your next book?
Okay, book 2 is Reintegration by Eden S. French. I love this book. It's absolutely gorgeous for a number of reasons, which I'll come on to. I stumbled across this from a recommendation by Tara, actually. Just goes to show you how wonderful this whole TLR network is. It's glorious. Let me read you the blurb first and then I'll go into it. Streetwise cyborg Lexi Vale brokers deals for gang lords in the anarchic city of Foundation. Her mind-reading implant gives her a crucial edge, but it also makes her brain a hot commodity. When she's targeted by an augmented hunter, Lexi joins a group of rebels, a murderous vigilante, a daredevil smuggler, a drug-addled surgeon, and a revolutionary whose past with Lexi endangers them all. A queer dystopian sci-fi about piecing together purpose from fragments of love and loss, even while the world itself is tearing apart. Does that not sound amazing?
I got to tell you, this book has gotten a whole whack of love from TLR reviewers. A lot of favorites badges, a lot of recommendations for this book. This book was originally self-published by Eden, and then recently, I think it was last year, republished by Queer Pack. So it got a bit of a makeover, it got a new cover, and apparently it's even better now.
Well, I mean, I can't comment on the original, but I have to say I adored this. Everything about it, the writing, it flows so beautifully when you read it. The topic, sci-fi dystopian, I absolutely love that anyway. The queer aspect, it is so diverse. It is so all-encompassing. That, I mean, I have to say that melted my heart. It just sang to my soul. It's absolutely lovely. I enjoyed the whole thing. The world building, the character development, and the cast is quite wide. It's absolutely brilliant. Loved every aspect of it, I must say.
I'm so happy to see queer diversity appearing increasingly in our fiction.
Yeah.
I think it's important because we are a community and it's not just, one tiny little sector of it, because there are more of us.
Yes, I totally agree with you. And I like to read different as well. I'm familiar with how my world and my life operates. It's so wonderful to actually get into somebody else's mind or see different. And what I find quite fascinating as well, when I read these stories, often I identify with some of the struggles or challenges that any individual might have gone through. So it really resonates. And, I think you can all connect with somebody on that level sometimes when you actually look inside and, we're all human at the end of the day, all trying to seek a bit of love.
Absolutely. And I think you've just hit spot on why it's important to have diversity in all literatures, because then you can empathize and you can put yourself in the place of others and you can realize that their journey is maybe not exactly the same journey as yours, but it's not so different that you can't understand it.
Exactly. Love it, honestly. And it's a really interesting aspect in the book as well, looking at the codists who are, have everything. They live in this wonderful world. They follow a code, but they live in this, they've got everything they could possibly want. And on the other hand, you've got everyone that lives in Foundation, living in squalor. So it's a really interesting dynamic with the balance between the two and how the world is completely separated in the future. It's fabulous, really great.
So there's a commentary on the haves versus the have-nots as well.
Correct, yeah. It's really interesting. Yeah, it's very reflective of day-to-day world, actually. It's amazing.
Okay. Instead of getting into a long conversation about haves versus have-nots, let's move on to your next book.
I think that's a great idea. Okay, this is The Innocents by Riley Lashar. Love me some vampire action, and this book is wonderful. Again, let me read you the blurb and then we'll go from there. For thousands of years they have roamed the darkness, subsisting on the blood of men, the Durafs, though most people would only know them as vampires. For thousands of years they have been hunted, pursued in secret by scores of men who have tried and failed to exterminate them. For thousands of years the fight has been fair. Now a group of North Atlantic hunters have discovered a weakness, the Singiments, a subspecies of humans with whom the Durafs share a mortal link. Far more vulnerable to attack, these innocents pose an imminent threat to the clan of Hayden, a 1,000-year-old Duraf whose unsettled history with Lilith poses its own pressing complications. To prevent their extinction, Hayden and her clan are forced to take on a paradoxical assignment as guardians of those who they are inclined by their very natures to seduce and consume. Oh, delicious.
That sounds intense.
Intense is exactly the perfect word to describe this book. It's really intense and brought on by the connection between the vampires, the Durafs and the Singiments. I don't want to spoil this book because it truly is wonderful. And it's a theme I've never seen or experienced in any vampire story at all. It's very, very different. And I love it. It's very gruesome, which is great, as vampire books should be. Although that's not knocking the sparkly vampires, because I have to say I did love those books too. But this is very... I really did, honestly.
That was out of nowhere. Okay.
But it really is, it's full on. It's exactly as you'd want a vampire story to be. It's very emotional. It also tackles some of the content within the story is I found sometimes a little difficult to read. Not that I wouldn't read it. It's wonderful. It's brilliant. It's quite hard hitting and gets you emotionally.
What kind of content?
There's violence towards children in the book, and there's also actually a couple of male-female sexual references as well. So I don't know if that...
Like explicit sex scenes?
No,
or like
never get into
passing.
Never get into explicit sex, but there's references towards it. It's about to happen.
Okay. All right. Well, fair enough. Now the readers have an informed decision to make.
It is awesome. Honestly, I would highly recommend it. It is a wonderful, wonderful book. So intense.
So she's known for her intensity, for sure, but she's also known for really going there. And does she do that in this book as well?
Yeah. The sex scenes are pretty awesome. There aren't as many as you find in Behind the Curtain, for example. I think that's more of a erotica novel. And also what's fascinating about that book is she uses the sex as almost a language within the story, which is quite fascinating. So there's definitely sex within this book, and it's steamy, super steamy, and it's lovely. Highly recommend.
Okay, cool. That's definitely going onto my to-read list.
Do it!
You're listening to The Lesbian Talk Show. TheLesbianTalkShow.com, your hub of podcast information. Okay, and your last recommendation.
Now, okay, so this will make you smile. Or those three books that I've just mentioned now, there's an element of darkness to them, perhaps, or the discussion about happily ever after and the meat and the substance within the books. This last book, I never really thought I was into romance. It's not typically a genre that I go for, but I've had many discussions with Kristen Jameson, who reliably informed me that actually I am a romance lover. And I've picked up this book, The Way You Smile by Kiki Archer, who is wonderful. She came on Seize the Day. She's such a lovely individual, such a lovely human. And this book had me smiling from the beginning to the end. It was captivating. Oh, it's just lovely. And how she writes is brilliant. Let me read the blurb, because I think it just shows Kiki all over, I think, in terms of how she approaches it. It's wonderful. Okay. Real life doesn't play out like a movie. Electric connections mostly mean you've got static in your jumper. Camilla Moore knows that. She's not daft. She has 2 teenage boys and bills to pay. Plus, the only man she's ever been with has traded her in for a gym bunny. What a bugger. Returning to work's the answer, but when she finds herself in the wrong room, wrong place, at the wrong time, the last thing she expects is to be promoted out of obscurity into the arms of Harriet Imogen Pearson, media darling, hotshot, entrepreneur and notorious lesbian playgirl. Camilla can't believe it. She's an ordinary woman, nothing special in her view. So what's Harriet's motivation? What's her endgame? Are Camilla's feelings just infatuation, or is this real life love? It's brilliant. And it's exactly what it says on the tin. It is, it's just fabulous. And that level of humour within the blurb on its own is, you feel it and read it throughout the story. I laughed out loud on the tube when I was reading this to work. It's just a really fabulous feel-good book.
I love the way Archer injects ridiculous situations for her characters to get into, things that we can kind of relate to. Perhaps not on the epic level that she manages, but on some level we can relate, because at some point, we got a new job and we had the weird awkwardness of having to be there, and then like something happens and you realize you're the complete outsider.
I totally agree with you. And I think what comes through, and I think she mentioned it she did mention it to me when she was on, a lot of her stories come from personal experience. And you can read that in the words, because you can feel it's very, very, very authentic. I mean, when I did the review online, I put effortlessly convincing and wonderfully fabulous to read. It's so funny. It's marvellous, absolutely marvellous. And I really identified, being a mother, the comments about your children growing up and, going from the fond cuddles to them stomping up and down the stairs. It's just, and all of the... Actually, this would be interesting to understand from your point of view, or anyone in America. There's quite a lot of Britishisms and lots of British references, which resonated with me so much, and I was very fond reading them. How does it come across reading it if you're not in the UK?
So the American audience, I think, will by and large struggle with it, because American audiences don't tend to be as exposed to the British culture as the British people are exposed to the American culture, if that makes sense. But South Africa being an ex-British colony, there are similarities still. And I watch enough British TV and read enough British books. I love British books that I got it.
It's brilliant, honestly. I smiled the whole way through. And my favourite line, which I did post to Kiki, when she referred to the art of lesbian sex as being compared to spiralising vegetables. If you can do that. Oh no, I was on the floor. I thought it was hilarious. Absolutely hilarious. So yeah, I have to say, a fabulous book. Now, and what do you, is this, I've heard the term chick lit bounded around quite a bit. Is it, so, and that's, and how does that differ from romance? Because this is just more feel good general, or just happy? I don't.
Okay, so chick lit is a genre that was created specifically to appeal to young women. Okay, so it tends to be lighter. It tends to be about career changes, or about that part of your life when you're starting out or starting something new, or it's a lighter, fluffier genre.
What? Yeah.
Romance is such a diverse genre, so chick lit often slots into romance, but this is a lighter romance, so it can fall into both romance and chick lit for me.
It's great. It's a real feel good story, and I loved it. And I've downloaded most of her books now, actually, which I need to get on and read on the back of it. So highly recommend.
I'm a huge Archer fan.
She's brilliant.
Oh yes. I've had her on the show several times. She has interesting ideas on publishing that goes very against what a lot of other people say, and I find that fascinating.
And she does very well.
And she's just a delightful human
nail
being.
On the head, 100%. And you can't knock that. And that's great when you're writing. It comes out in the words, and I think as a persona with the books is fabulous.
Natalie, thank you so much for joining me today. Where can people find you? Because they're going to fall in love with you and decide they're going to stalk you online.
Stalk away.
Where are they going to find you?
Yeah, stalk away. Oh, goodness. Do you know what? I ask this question to everybody when they come on my show. I'm not prepared for it. Right, let's see. So you can get me. You can find me. My website is seesthe-day.com. Twitter is at Nat Miller-Snell. And Facebook is also at Nat Miller-Snell, I believe.
Okay, so I will add links in the show notes so you can just click on it and contact Natalie. She's also got a show that appears on the Lesbian Talk Show, so don't forget to go and check out all the Seize the Day episodes. She's actually had Kiki Archer on talking about amazing motivational stuff, and she's also quite active on Facebook.
I am.
But she doesn't...
I'm trying. You can see me working out on Facebook and Instagram. I didn't say that. Seize the Day. Hang on. Seize the Day _today on Instagram. And I post a lot about the gym there.
And you can check out Natalie's workout videos for those who are interested. I watch them just to see her lifting weights.
Hey, if it inspires, it's all good.
That's all for this week. Bye.
Bye.
This has been the Lesbian Review Podcast. You can find this and other awesome shows by searching for the Lesbian Talk Show anywhere you get your podcasts. We're even on Spotify now. Find more information on our guest in the show notes, as well as links to what we spoke about on this episode. And if you've enjoyed this podcast and want to see us creating more awesome content, then consider becoming a patron. Not only does this mean we can keep on doing this, but you will get exclusive podcasts that do not appear on the channel. You can find out all about it on patreon.com/The Lesbian Talk Show. The link is in the show notes. That's all for this episode. Bye.
1,000-year-old giraffe. 1,000-year-old giraffe. Ugh. Clear that. 1,000-year-old giraffe. Oh, for fuck's sake. Giraffe. It's a giraffe. Giraffe. Oh, let's just run with it.